More foreign retail shops closed at Circle amid tension. Also coming up tonight, Cocoa Board directs farmers to cut down all diseased trees for replanting of new hybrid seedlings. We'll be back with the details after this break. Welcome back to the program. I am Sandra Esenam Apeno. We begin with some headline stories, and there is a tall list of PPE stuck at the various ports due to lack of funds to clear them. Details plus many more coming up in our summary.
The Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Investments Promotion Center, GIPC, has said that implementing the GIPC Act 2013, Act 865, has been problematic as a result of the trade relationship that has existed among West African nationals over the years. For Yofi Grant, the issue becomes a worry to indigents when foreigners tend to outcompete them as a result of competitive financing or easy penetration into the market, and not necessarily that they cannot do business alongside these foreigners. Currently, a tall list of persons whose personal protective equipment PPEs are stuck at the various ports as a result of lack of funds to clear the items. This is according to the Importers and Wholesalers Association of Personal Protective Equipment Ghana. The association is therefore calling on the government to consider scrapping the clearing duty on all PPEs imported into the country in this COVID-19 era.
Away from our summaries, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee is worried about the inability of government to set criteria for capping the Stabilization Fund. Speaking at the launch of its first issue paper on the management of the petroleum revenue, chairman of the committee, Noble Waza, believes there is a need for a different approach in capping process.
The Stabilization Fund, which was initially capped at $300 million, has been reviewed to $100 million due to the outbreak of COVID-19. Government is expected to use the $200 million excess to support other budgetary allocations that may be affected by the impact of the pandemic. But Chairman of PIAC, Noble Waja, said there should be a criteria for the capping.
A loophole in allowing the Minister of Finance to place a cap on the Ghana Stabilization Fund at his or her discretion, as may be necessitated by macroeconomic conditions, albeit with the approval of Parliament. There is no established criteria for the determination of the cap and use of the proceeds. So the Minister has a discretion to determine the threshold for the capping of the Stabilization Fund, yet there are no established criteria for him to do or to go on this trend, even though he has to do it with approval of Parliament.
Speaking at the launch of its first issue paper, technical manager of the committee, Mark Ajiman, has been explaining the need to use the country's petroleum revenue judiciously.
We need to have made enough accumulation in the fund to achieve that purpose. So currently in 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been capped at $100 million. 2018-2019, it was at $300 million US. Now, let's assume that this pandemic prolongs into 2021, and we have reduced petroleum revenues. $100 million US cannot even cater for a quarter expenditure with regards to programs and projects under the ABFA. Okay, so in essence, what we are saying is that you need to have a basis for capping the Stabilization Fund, taking into account the purpose for establishing that fund.
The committee also raised concerns about the inability of the government to complete projects on schedule.
You're still watching Business Live as Ghana and the rest of the world gear up for the Continental Free Trade Agreement in 2021. Leaders have been urged to prioritize the implementation of policies and reforms that will make the continent attractive to investors, as well as deal with the high cost of lending to SMEs. Charles Ite engaged the former UK Cabinet Minister Paul Boateng and Managing Director and CEO of Zenith Bank, Ebenezer Onyengu, via Zoom in this report.
Former UK Cabinet Minister Paul Boateng says The success of the Continental Free Trade Agreement area will be based on reforms and strategies that will make the continent attractive to investors. Speaking ahead of the Africa Investment Risk and Compliance Summit, Paul Yalboatin explains that even though threats of COVID-19 could be a challenge, the continent must harness the opportunities that come with regional integration.
Yes, the pandemic is a crisis. The world is in recession. Africa will not be and is not immune from either the pandemic or the global recession. But a crisis is both a challenge and an opportunity. And the pandemic in its way creates a unique opportunity, not least for small and medium-sized enterprises. So we have to make sure that there is startup capital for them, that there's a transparent and reliable regulatory environment that facilitates entrepreneurship and encourages investors.
Even as the Continental Free Trade Agreement opens up for the free movement of goods and services, the emergence of a burgeoning entrepreneurial space questions Africa's preparedness to support SMEs to expand to meet global competition. Already, they are concerned over the high cost of lending. Ebenezer Onyegu is the Managing Director and CEO at Zenith Bank PLC.
The issue of access to credits is being addressed. If the moment we have the African Continental Free Trade Zone, I expect them to draw up a framework that should guide various countries on the institutional support and framework required to give flesh and life to their initiatives. They also need institutional support and framework from the different countries. We need to have some reforms that will support the initiative they will come up with. Then, of course, they need the support of the private sector and the public sector altogether. So we need to see it as a completely African project. We need to see it as a project that will help us rejuvenate the African enterprise, the way we conduct ourselves, and let's achieve economies of scale.
The theme of the conference is attracting and sustaining investment in Africa post-COVID-19, staying ahead of the compliance curve. Discussions during the summit will be focused on policy, business opportunities, and how to lower investment risks to expand the discourse and action in Africa.
Now, the Western North region has over 500,000 hectares of cocoa farms. In time past, the region was producing 1/3 of Ghana's total cocoa for export. However, cocoa production in the region has been declining sharply in the last decade due to cocoa swallow shoot disease. I must say. The once vibrant Assam cocoa district is now a ghost community. In a bid to salvage the situation, Cocoa Board has directed all diseased cocoa trees to be cut down for replanting of new hybrid cocoa seedlings. Nathalia Kwanzaa has more in this report.
80-year-old Stephen Ewua has farmed cocoa all his life in the small town of Adiepena in the Bia West district of the Western North region. Before his farm was affected by the cocoa swollen shoot virus, he was harvesting over 300 bags every season.
By that of disease, all my cocoa farm broke, and now I've get disease. Even last year, I went to hospital for 1 year because I was thinking of my life. You see, if not my wife, then I have been die and tell that because of my wife, I've now fine. But now I'm standing here, I'm still sick.
A few years ago, Adiepena was a cocoa boom town, recording 1,000 tons of cocoa every year. Now, you would know immediately the trees are doomed and infected by the deadly swollen shoot disease even a distance away. 2 years ago, I was in this village. Today, as I traveled through the swaths of cocoa farmlands, the trees are withered and covered with weeds. It was not like this when I first came here. A 2018 survey by Cocoa Board on 256,000 hectares of farms in the Western North region showed 69% have been affected by the cocoa swollen shoots virus disease. In 2018, farmers produced 64,000 bags of cocoa. Last year, they only had 30.
Wasn't enough used to support Ghana, the national production, about 1/3 of production in the country, about 10 years, 15 years ago. I remember we produced 350,000 metric tons at a point, but last year we recorded just about 140,000 metric tons.
For the whole of the Western North region.
Exactly. You can see that sharp decline. And the reason is what we are seeing over here is because of the cocoa swollen shoot virus. So the situation is not too good. The situation is too alarming, and I think as a country we need to stand up and find a solution to this menace. A farmer here, the farm is about 20 hectares. About 15 years ago, it was producing about 150 bags. Today, the farmer is producing nothing. You can see from here that virtually we have a zero production here. So automatically, it will affect the finances of the farmer. So I think that you can see, and I think that because of the fact that if we lost their livelihoods, it pushed them to move to their various hometowns.
From one community to the other in this area, farmers say the battle against this disease is slipping through their fingers.
Eka dubia na yenya kura eka ohade yetuminya but enne 100 bas enne ya meka say eka du bag ba kokura untuminya den enya but enne ameka say ukuta koko eka du a bag ba kokura afi no behia unya koko ni nyina wu ama yaku afo aye na omo ha ni nyina adwane ko anase omo akọ bi obi nso akọ ba bi foforo akọ enfuo no anu nti ama aya ayoro ama yie.
There is no chemical to control the cocoa swollen shoots virus. The only option is to cut down the trees and replant. In a bid to ensure that the disease is controlled, Cocoa Board has introduced the cocoa rehabilitation program.
If the whole year we produced 900,000 tons, Western North alone was giving us 300,000 tons. And now that the CSSVD has affected the region, production has come down drastically. And obviously, it will also affect the national output. So if we aim to make 1 million tons, as we made in 2010, 2011, because of this reduction, it's going to affect us. We are happy that we have started an intervention, the cocoa rehabilitation program, which is aimed at ending this menace. Now, if we cut the trees and then we rehabilitate them.
Now, while COVID-19 pandemic is primarily a health emergency, its socio-economic impact cannot be underestimated. Government took measures to halt further spread of the virus, but the pandemic still had alarming impact on the economy and the livelihood of people, most importantly or mostly the vulnerable. International NGO World Vision Ghana has conducted a number of studies into this in this regard, and today we focus on agriculture and food security in the COVID-19 pandemic era. Joining me via Zoom is Maxwell Amedi, Food Security and Reliance Technical Programs Manager of World Visions. Thanks so much for your time this evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening to your cherished viewers. It's a pleasure to be on the show this evening.
Great. So your study indicates that the agri sector has been adversely affected by the pandemic. How bad is this?
Okay. I must say that the study was actually conducted to assess the impact that COVID had on the agriculture value chain. Talking about agriculture value chain, we are not only looking at only crops, but we are also looking at the livestock sector. Let me cite an example, for instance, taking the livestock sector, for instance. You could see that if you take, let's say, poultry, most of the birds, the eggs that are produced, they normally supply to hotels, restaurants, and schools, and people even do exports. But, in this COVID era, we have really been hit and been affected. You can't tell the bird not to lay eggs. And the people who normally take huge volumes of these eggs, to actually consume or to use, they have closed down workshops and conferences. They have been banned on all those things. So, and therefore, the demand has gone down, and all those things has really affected the livestock sector. Coming down to the crop sector, for instance, you could see that the movement of commodities within country has really been up, especially during the lockdown period. You could see that a lot of places where we have commodities and areas that are commodities are needed, instead of us moving them to places that are needed because of those restrictions, there were issues here and there. And currently, border closures and all other issues, has really affected the crop sector. Taking, for instance, somebody that is into, let's say, vegetable export. With all these restrictions here and there, you can imagine how that vegetable exporter would actually be coping with these situations in this era, in the, what you call it, COVID-19 era.
Right.
So just to answer your question, just to say that there are different levels of impact depending on the sector and also the actor within the value chain.
All right, so you talked about critical cash flow challenges. Explain further, because we know government announced some package for farmers during the period. So exactly what is the issue? Okay, so I must admit that even though government has done some interventions in terms of helping these people that we are talking about, let me talk about the provision of water and light for all citizens, and also talking about the COVID-19 alleviation program, which is being handled by National Board for Small Scale Industry. But there is a gap in there. That is the fact that farmers and the fisher folks and these people that we are talking about, most of them have not been reached. But we are looking at an inclusive social protection, intervention that will include all this category of people for them to actually benefit from this. So even though there has been something done by the government, we think that at this point there is something more that we can do to help these people to bounce back to normal. But how has the changes in demand and supply affected the sector?
Okay. The changes in demand of goods and services, I think I started by even talking about citing example of egg, maize and other commodities that a lot of people who deal in these commodities normally supply to schools, hotels, and restaurants. And you and I know that all those institutions or restaurants and schools, are still not functioning. And so the demands that they used to pick from farmers and all people that deal in those commodities, because the workshops are not coming on, the restaurants are not functioning, it becomes very difficult for huge volumes of these commodities to really be picked. There's a lot of uncertainty in the system, and therefore the demand and supply, from both ends have really been affected as a result of COVID.
Right. But most importantly, one wants to know how you intend to address, or the way to address possible issues of insecurity, because your finding probably will have some solutions to the problem.
Okay. Just to reiterate or re-emphasize, I think the first point that I made about inclusive social protection intervention, talking about the packages that the government has really given small and medium scale industries. Some group of people have actually been left out of the scene, and there is a need for us to really look at what is it that government can do to be able to support them, for instance, the smallholder farmers. If for instance, even some of them are actually even producing again, is there a possibility that government can come in to even purchase their products, and also again those who will still even go into production? Is there a way of going further to subsidize the inputs that they are using in production? Going beyond that, I think again there is a need for us to support the farmers technically to be able to increase their yields, and also there's a need for us to also work on our post-harvest losses, because this country, we have a lot of post-harvest losses.
Right.
Another key thing I think we can do also again is that we need to diversification of our income and livelihood opportunities, because as you can see, the impact having so much impact or toll on certain sectors as compared to others. We need to
Maxwell, unfortunately, we are running out of time. Maxwell Amedi is the Food Security and Resilience Technical Program Manager of World Vision. I want to say a big thank you, but let's move on to something really trendy and very important, because more foreign retail shops have been closed. This time it's at the Trade Ministry's task force was at Circle in Accra, where they were met with some resistance. Joining me via Zoom again for more is the Public Relations Officer of the Trade and Industry Ministry, Prince Watting. Prince, grateful for your time this evening. Hello, Prince. Prince, looks like you're on mute. Can you unmute for us? Looks like we're having issues connecting to Prince, but it's a very important issue in the retail market. It's lingered on for so many years, 25 years, and still running. But we have some shops that have been closed. Yesterday, 50 of them were closed, and today we still have more shops being closed, and we are trying so much to get in touch with the task force, the leader of that task force, to give us more details on what exactly happened today. Prince, if you're back, if you can hear me, thanks once again for joining us. Give us details of what actually transpired today. Looks like we are having serious issues connecting to Prince technology, but let's do other stories before we go. Non-governmental youth organization, as part of activities to mark this year's International Youth Day, has organized a day empowerment skills program for some youth in Ashoman Estate in the Greater Accra region. The program is to support the quest by government to train the youth in employable skills while boosting their economic empowerment. There's more in the following report.
Which was targeted at medication making and indoor decorations, is the third in the series of training programs by Quantum Ideas Ghana. According to the Executive Director, Ethel Ann Komlaga, this year's International Youth Day theme coincides with the objective of the group, which is to engage the youth to take global challenges to deliver on the objectives of the SDGs.
There are lots of people in the houses that can do a lot, but because of lack of money and even the lack of ideas, so we feel like, why don't we fill the gap? Let's train them to do something that they don't need so much money to start. You don't need so much money. Something that you can just buy just some few stuff from the market and you're able to make a good use of it. Soap making, everybody uses soap. You can't say that the day goes by, you go to the bathroom, you don't use soap and all that. So this particular soap, it's just the ingredients are already in our homes. So let's tell them that when you pick maybe neem leaf, you pick pawpaw, you pick you go and buy some caustic soda, and this is the process, the short process you follow to get a soap for your household needs. Why not?
Guest speaker Dr. Bernard Tete Dumanya encouraged the youth to take advantage of such skills training and other programs to empower themselves. Some deserving participants will share their ideas on solving unemployment-related issues, and COVID-19 were recognized. Some of them spoke to Joy Business.
What we can do as youth today is to basically get to know what exactly we want, and then we go ahead to learn more about it. So we learn about the risk, we get to know more about the predecessors, those who have done it and how they were able to do it.
That's how we wrap up the program tonight. Unfortunately, we are unable to connect back to Prince, who follow up on that development. I am Sandra Esenam. I can log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Thanks so much for watching.